Let's take this show on the road. Same-ish, different day. I'll be bored out my mind. Hometown, love my place.
Hey friends, let's dye some yarn. Today we're going to be dyeing on sock yarn. This is a 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, biodegradable nylon even. And first I'm going to use my ties and add one to each skein to help detangle skeins after dyeing and not getting them too tangled into each other. And then I'm just going to add all four here. There we go. We're going to dye 4 skeins today. And we are going to be using acid dyes, which is what I use most of the time. Let's see now. Here we are. And the 4th skein. We have zip tied all 4 skeins. And now we're going to soak them, because they need to be completely wet and able to be able to catch the dye properly. And we're going to add citric acid. I'll just add about half a tablespoon into the soaking water. Just put that aside. And then we're going to add, I'm just using any old plastic container here. This is a large one since I sometimes do commercial dyeing. You do not need one as big as this. You just need one that is big enough to comfortably fit all your yarn so that it gets submerged totally. I'm going to add, that's 2 liters. I'm using metric measurements. 4 liters. I'm going to add another 2 liters. Just to make sure that there's enough water for the yarn to be completely soaked. So you're just going to add some more here. Let's see. There we are. That is 6 liters. And now we are going to add our yarn. I'm just going to step on over to the other side of the camera. Here we are. Then we just tuck them in the water and push down to make sure everything gets soaked. We do not want any part of the yarn to be dry because it won't catch the color properly. So just pushing it down, getting everything completely wet. There we are. Now we're going to let this sit for about half an hour at least before we start dyeing. Let's get some dyeing on the way. I have assembled all the tools that I need. I have a canteen that I will be dyeing in. Got my measuring cups with water. This is an old yogurt tub that I save those. They are very handy. I have water in it. Just put my spoons in. We got the citric acid. We got some dyes. We got gloves, protection for your airways, spoons, and my little whisker. So we are just about ready to start. We just need to get the yarn in the pan. So let's start up with getting some more citric acid in the canteen. I'll add about a tablespoon-ish. Make sure the dye will adhere to the yarn. And I'm adding in 3 liters of water. Be good for this. So the first thing I'm gonna do, this is going to be a 2-part dye operation. So the first thing I'm gonna do is dye all the yarn in just one color. And we are going to use the yellow one for that. So let's put our mask on to protect our airways. This is a very fine powder, we do not want to breathe it in. And I'm grabbing my spoon. And I'm using Jacquard acid dyes in the yellow sun. And I'm going to add just a little bit, maybe even a little less. Let's go with that first. I'm adding that directly to the water. And I'm going to use the little whisker to make sure it dissolves properly. This is looking good. Just pop that in there. This aside. And let's add the yarn. The yarn has been soaking for a little over half an hour now. I'm just going to squeeze out some of the water. Another one. I'm not wearing gloves right now, so my fingers are, well, let's see, we got a little bit tangled here. The other yarn, there we go. My fingers are going to turn a bit yellow probably, but it's fine. Comes with the territory. But if you want to avoid that, put on your gloves. We just put them in side by side in the canteen. I'm just squeezing out some excess water from the soaking so I don't spill water absolutely everywhere. And the last one. We just arrange them side by side like this. There we go. And I'm going to wash my hands real quick. There we go. Now let's move this over to this side. And we can start the hot plates. I'm using these two because we need heat in the entire pan. So I'm using both plates, and I will be moving the canteen around to make sure everything gets heated. Because it needs to get hot. The thing that makes the dye stick to the yarn is the combination of the citric acid, the dye, and hot water. If the water doesn't get hot, it is not going to, the dye is not going to stick in those spots. So we'll start off by heating up this, just pushing it down, making sure everything is getting some yellow color. And once this has heated up properly, we are going to do some speckling with these colors. The water is starting to heat up now. We're going to scooch the canteen around a bit. Poke the yarn a little. Make sure we get hot water everywhere. We're going to move it about a little. We want this dye to stick first. And then we will add speckles. And once the yarn is hot, the speckles will hit instantly. We'll just continue to heat up the pan and the water in it. And since this is a superwash yarn, it's not too sensitive to poking it, but still you need to be a little bit careful. Water has been heating up for a bit, and now we're going to test to see if it's starting to get warm everywhere in the canteen. So I'm putting on gloves, and I don't recommend you do it the way I do. Find your own way of checking. I just do this, put my hands in, my fingers in, and feel it. It's starting to get warm here, but it's not warm enough yet. And here we got some proper heat all the way down here. So we need to add more in this section. So I'm going to place that over the large hot plate here because that's the most powerful one on my very, very old stove. Otherwise we're starting to get there heat-wise. So I'm giving the yarn another 5 minutes to heat up, and we're starting to get to a place that I'm happy with. And we are ready to start speckling. Now, I think speckling is one of the trickiest things there are. It's really hard to get a good precision on it and prevent it from just spreading everywhere when you add the dye. But we'll try. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove a little bit of the water. Because what happens when you add another dye in is when it hits the water, it's just going to spread. And we want some of the yarn to be above water level now, so that we can add the speckles. So I'm just taking a little bit out. I'm just using another one of these empty yogurt containers that I have. So move you out of the way a bit. There we go. And I'm turning down the heat as well, so I don't burn the yarn. And as you can see, the water is completely clear. which means the dye we added in first has exhausted completely. So I think we're gonna leave it like that. We'll just set that aside. But there are many ways that you can do speckles. And like I said, this is not my forte really. Some use these tea strainers to just dab in extra dye. I've never been really successful with that. So I'm going to attempt to use just tiny amounts on teaspoons. First of all, we are putting on our mask, of course, to protect our airways. There we go. And I am going to be using Jacquard acid dye in Kelly Green. And then I have this one I have in my web shop if you're interested. And then I'm also going to use this Pro Chemical and dye in the color Hot Pink and the color Sky Blue. And yeah, let's see what we get. I think we're going to start with the pink one actually. That is very pink. I'm grabbing just a tiny, tiny bit. A little bit goes a long way. As you can see, it spreads out immediately, even with that tiny amount. Okay. We're getting some speckles, but we're also getting some blotches of color. That's okay. That's the pink one, and we're going to do a tiny bit of sky blue. Also very, very pigmented. So I'm just doing teeny tiny amounts. Oh, there's a lot in one space. Have to be really, really gentle with this. Add in a wee bit more. Oops. See, it instantly spreads around even though I've removed quite a lot of the water. There we go. And we are going to add a little bit of Kelly Green. Just looks more yellow, but it is bright green, as you will see in a second. You need to be very, very careful, very slight hand movements. Tiny bit more. Now I'm working with just the tiniest amounts. There we go. As you can see, it's spreading out. We're getting some blotches here, some here, but it's fine. Turning the heat down even more, moving it around a bit, and I'm putting on a lid as well to utilize the steam in the pan. We're going to give it a few minutes to settle. Yeah, let's add a couple of minutes to settle. We're going to turn off the heat completely now. And I'm not touching this now, because if I start touching, moving around in the pan, I will spread all the dye around. We did get some speckles here and there. And a few blotches, but that's okay. That's what happens when you hand dye yarns. You don't have complete control. And you just need to do it several times until you find what works best for you. I'm happy with this. This will make some really pretty socks later on, I think. So now we're going to set the pan aside to cool completely before rinsing it. And it's very important you do not rinse the yarn until it has cooled completely. Otherwise you will shock it. Now, granted, this is superwash yarn, so it is less sensitive, but keep it as a general rule that you never rinse your yarn after dyeing before the yarn has cooled completely. There we go. And it's just going to rest for a few hours until completely cooled. It is time to rinse the yarns. As you can see, we got a mixture of speckles and some blobs here and there. But it still looks kind of cute. So let's start by adding some water into my plastic bowl. You can of course rinse directly in the sink if you want to, or whatever you like, but I prefer this one. I'm going to add in a little bit of soak, which is my go-to for rinsing yarn. And this one you don't really need to rinse out, you don't need to do an extra rinse, but I usually always do, or usually at least. I do it twice just to make sure I get out as much extra dye as I can. You can also use dish soap, or you can use shampoo, and in that case you will need to rinse several times. And if you like the soak, I do have those in the web shop, the smaller bottles. So I'm going to link that below if you're interested. Okay. Well, let's see what we got. I'm just going to squeeze out the water. And tuck it in the plastic bowl. And as you can see, the water has the dye has completely exhausted, so the water is clear now, which is what we're looking for when we're dyeing. I'm trying to get them in next to each other to avoid too much tangling. There we go. I'm just gonna pour out the water. Well, I just have this bowl to put the yarn in as I'm rinsing it. Okay. I'm just gonna poke it a little. I don't want to make too much of a mess in here. It'll just tangle. Make sure you rinse the ties as well, because sometimes there's little bit of dye on those two. And you don't want that to carry over once you've dyed it. And I'm just squeezing out the water. We'll get another one. Squeezing out the water again. And I don't twist the yarn, I just squeeze it. And the last one. You can use a salad spinner to get some more water out. If you have one, just make sure you don't use it for anything other than yarn afterwards. I prefer to just squeeze by hand though. I'm gonna add some water again. And I'm going to give them another rinse, just to make sure we caught any and all residue of dye that may be in there. It didn't look like it though, because the water was completely clear, both in the pan and in the rinsing bowl. I'm filling it about half full, just to make sure the yarn has space to move. There we go. Just another quick rinse. A strand of hair caught in here. There we go. Let's see if we can find that first. There it is. And squeezing out the water. And you rinse in cold water, of course. Same temperature as the yarn is when you start rinsing it. It needs to be the same temperature. second one. And the third one. And the last one. And squeeze out water. And that's it. Now we're going to hang it to dry. And I just hang them on a regular clothing rack. And it will dry for a couple of days. After the first 24 hours or so, I will move the tie down like so, because the yarn gets very thick here. And I will, around here, and I will move the tie a bit to change that spot so it dries up. So that's it. I'll be back with the finished result. Here's the result of our little dyeing experiment. It's a very summery color. I really like how it came out. It has some speckles, also some blotches, but I'm okay with that. I think this will make a very pretty summery top, maybe. Something like that. So please let me know if you try to dye this yourself. I would love to see it. Tag me by all means. And also if you knit something with your hand-dyed yarns, I would love to see that as well. So please do tag me.